Well, hello there, and welcome back to Bloom Talks with Charlie. And
Linda Bloom, we're glad to be with you.
so today we're going to be talking about something that is known as reframing. And the term kind of speaks for itself. You know, if you've got a picture, you want to put it in a frame, and sometimes you might want to or need to reframe it, put it in a different frame. And we're going to be talking about reframing pictures, but not the physical pictures that we have on our walls. We're going to be talking about how we can reframe certain experiences and certain thoughts and certain pictures, mental pictures that we have in our mind about certain experiences that we've had. Because as you may have noticed with pictures, the kind of frame that you have really does influence the way in which you perceive and experience and relate to the picture. It really does affect it. So reframing in the context of relationships and experiences that we have has to do basically with shifting or changing the attitude in which you are holding your experience. And we're going to be talking a lot about reframing experiences that are particularly troublesome in relationships. And that is something that occurs quite frequently with most of us, in which we experience ourselves as victims of something or someone that has injured us or wounded us or hurt us or in some way caused us pain that we have had to deal with. And when we hold ourselves in a frame of being a victim, we're much more likely to respond in ways that are not productive for the relationship or for ourselves. Now, of course, there's a lot of other kinds of pictures besides the picture of the victim that we can reframe or change our attitude towards that can make a huge difference too. But that's one of the things that we're going to be looking at today, since it's so prevalent in relationships, and talk about how that reframe can happen, right?
Yes, so I love to give examples, but before I give you some concrete examples, I want to tell you why I believe this particular topic is so essential and important if you want to go for the gold and have the best possible relationship. The positive psychology movement, which both of us really respect, does a lot of research and then publishes the finding of their research. And they're aligned, all the people that we respect in the movement, in saying your level of happiness and well-being in your life only has 50% to do with your genes and only 10% to do with the circumstances of your life. But 40% of your well-being and happiness has to do with your beliefs and attitudes that drive your behaviors. So people hear all the time, relationships require work, but they are not often really clear what the work of relationship is. And so we try to give very specific guidelines about what our work is to be eligible to have a great relationship. So working with our beliefs and attitudes, with our thinking, with what goes on in our mind, is a very powerful and express avenue to have our relationships be better. So from the smallest examples, say you've got a lot of laundry to do. This is just a small. Laundry is a trivial piece of life. Most of us have to do our own laundry. And when you have baskets of laundry, you might have a sinking feeling and say, oh, more laundry to do. Why didn't he do some of this laundry? The kids are old enough to do some laundry. I feel put upon to have to do all this laundry. And if we catch ourselves just watching the mind bringing us down and making us unhappy because we feel put upon by this particular piece of housework, we can reframe that. And we can say, I am so glad that I'm in a family. I'm so glad that I'm partnered. I'm so glad that I have children. And I think I need to talk to the kids about doing their own laundry and putting their own things away. And this is a way to give ourselves a lift so that we don't feel put upon. I want to give you a more extreme example. This was many years ago. I worked with a couple and they got married, and he said, yes, I want to be a parent one day. And she was trusting him, and the years were going by, and she would bring it up, and he said, yes, I want to be a parent one day, but I'm not ready yet. And this went on for a number of years. She finally did leave him, not just because he didn't want to have a child with her, but there were other things wrong with the relationship also. And she was bitter, and she was angry, and she felt victimized because he had led her to believe that she was going to do parenthood with him and bring up the kids together. And she was so bitter that she said about her ex, he ruined my life. And as long as she was living with that belief in her mind, it was making her miserable and unhappy. And she wasn't so grief-stricken about losing the relationship with him. She was actually kind of relieved when she finally had the courage and the strength to leave the relationship with him. But she was grief-stricken that she'd lost her fertility. She was able, with support, to reframe that as, he never had a gun to my head insisting that we wait, that we wait, that we wait. I was in hope, and I was believing him. I wanted to believe him. Looking back on it now, he didn't mislead me. The signs were there that he just didn't want to grow up and mature and take on that much responsibility. She was able to reframe that difficult life circumstance, and it was a huge loss for her, so that the bitterness didn't make her heavy and drag her down.
I want to make a clarification, not a clarification, but I want to just insert something here, and then you can finish what you were saying. We don't want to promote the idea here that this process for this person or for anybody happens like that.
Quick or easily.
Yeah. How long did it take her between the time that she had the realization that it wasn't going to happen and the time that she finally became complete with that experience, that she finally recognized some of her contribution to it, and she went through the process of grieving,
and most of the first year after she left him. And it's important
so let's talk a little bit about what else is involved in the process.
I do want to speak to that, but I just want to say that when the bitterness finally lifted and the heaviness finally lifted and this terrible victim mind that she was living in, she was able to fall in love again. She went on to have stepchildren with the new partner that she could give her heart to and express that nurturing mother that had been so frustrated before. And if she had stayed in the bitterness, she may not have been able to have the happy family that she was so longing for.
She probably would have gotten into another relationship, but if she hadn't gotten complete with that experience and ultimately come to that kind of accountability, she would have brought that into the relationship.
That's right.
So let's talk a little bit about what those steps, those stages of the process are that begin with the identity of a victim and end up with the feeling of being empowered or being a hero even.
Well, first she had to let herself feel.
That's the most important step.
Feel what gross disappointment it was.
Yeah. She had to grieve the
and
loss.
the loss
Yeah.
of the dream of happy family with that,
Right.
the first husband. And she began, after she felt into it, the horribleness of it, to just have a little, well, maybe I had something to do with it. And she started to ask her question, how did I participate in this? How could I have been in denial for so many years when he kept telling me, I'm not ready, I'm not ready, I'm not ready.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to hear that he didn't want to do
Yeah.
the
The
responsibility.
signs were all there.
And she came to understand that he was a puer. Do you know that he was
What is a puer?
a flying boy, that he was
What-
like Peter
what do you
Pan.
mean?
He didn't want to grow up. He
Uh-huh.
loved the traveling light lifestyle.
Yeah.
And he had all the signs of it.
Yeah.
And she hadn't wanted to really acknowledge that the behaviors and some of the words that he was showing her, she hadn't really let it in.
So
she was buying into the words that he say and not seeing the complete picture.
So when you feel yourself to be a victim, it's natural that you're going to be focused on the victimizer,
Right.
the person or the circumstances that led to this feeling. You're going to be focused on how I was betrayed, how I was wronged, I was lied to, I was abused, I was disrespected, all of which may be absolutely true.
Mm-hmm.
All those things may have happened, or some of them may have happened. And that's important. We're not saying, don't feel any of that. You're going to feel it. And like Linda said, if you don't give yourself permission to feel
Mm-hmm.
the pain, the hurt,
Mm-hmm.
the outrage, the feeling of betrayal, all of that anger.
But not to
that
get
can
stuck
go
there.
But not to get stuck there.
That's right.
And that's what reframing ultimately does, is that it removes you from the frame of having the identity of a victim. And the problem with that, of course, is that not only do you get stuck in a very negative mind state, but you reinforce the feeling of powerlessness,
Mm-hmm.
and helplessness and hopelessness.
Mm-hmm.
Because a victim has been victimized. And when you've been victimized, you have been disempowered in some ways. So you have to both be willing to feel the victim who you have experienced yourself as being, but to not get possessed by that identity.
Mm-hmm.
Let yourself feel it. You may be in that state for a few hours or a few days, or it could be weeks or months sometimes, but it doesn't need to be that long if you are willing to do two things. Number one, willing to really let yourself experience this, how could you have done this, and feel the anger and the hurt and everything that goes along with it, even though in your mind you might be saying, oh, you're being a victim. And you can just talk back to your mind and say, I know it, and I was a victim, and and you're not going to talk me out of it. I'm in it. So be in it, but just let that voice that is there, that knows that yes, you were victimized, but there's more to you than being a victim.
That's right. And the language that we use when we speak, and even when we think about the circumstances of our life, particularly the really difficult ones, we can say, I've got a problem. You've got a problem. We've got a problem. And it sucks vital energy. Just that word is so heavy. When we say, we have a challenge, I have a challenge, or we have an opportunity here. I have an opportunity here. It doesn't negate the seriousness of the circumstances. People get sick. They get difficult medical diagnosis. We get kids that have problems in school. We have sometimes a teenager who's experimenting with drugs, driving too fast. We sometimes have relationship irreconcilable differences. And we can't always, especially not immediately, change those circumstances in our life, but we can change the way we relate to them. We can change the way we think about them so that they're not draining us, they're not robbing us, they're not stealing vital energy to be up to the challenge. It's not denying the problem, but it's a thought away. What is there for me to learn here? How have I participated in this? What is the opportunity for me here? And that gives us energy. That's uplifting, not draining.
When you're in the identity of a victim, you have no interest in learning anything because you've already concluded that something happened to you, that you had no control over. All that's implicit in the identity of a victim. And you were just being in your life, and all of a sudden you were struck by lightning. I mean, that literally can happen to people. And is that person a victim? You better believe it. Did they have anything to do with being struck by lightning? No, not necessarily, unless they were, in the top of a mountain holding up an iron rod or something and they attracted it. But no, there are definitely absolute real situations in which we were victimized by circumstances that were totally beyond our control. So when you can ask that question that Linda just raised, when you can get to that point, and like I said earlier, you may not be at that point for a while. You might have to go through, the process of grieving and anger and, letting it out and doing what you need to do before you can come to the now what question. Okay, so now what? Now that I've kind of purged myself of all those horrible feelings and done or said what I need to do, I'm in this space now where I am I'm no longer identified with the victim, but I'm not clear about who exactly I am besides that. There's a space there. And so what we want to do is, in that space, we can really inquire about something other than, what a terrible thing it was that happened to me. But we can inquire about, okay, so now what? And what is it that maybe I can take away from this experience that can enable me to feel more at cause in my life rather than more at effect? What can I learn? How can I minimize the chances that I might repeat whatever it was that contributed to this outcome? We can begin asking ourselves questions like that rather than reinforcing this victim identity and keep dwelling on how, that SOB did all these things to me. And, okay, so what can I learn? What can I take away from this that can serve me in the future? What can I learn?
I can give an example from a book that I read recently. My whole book group, for the last time we met, we read Mary Pfeiffer's new book, Rowing North, about women aging. And at one point in the book, she talks about not having family charming for her childhood. A lot of us didn't get family charming. We didn't have the ideal beginning. And she doesn't have any bitterness or anger or resentment towards her family for the ways in which they didn't give her the best possible start. She has gratitude to her family. She knows they did the best they did. And she said, it made me very independent, which has held me in good stead all my life. And I did have to grow up fast. I was a parental child, but I learned that I feel so good when I help other people. And that really touched me. It really rang true for me. I happen to really admire her and admire all of her books. She's in a 2-therapist family like us. And so many people have a rough beginning in their childhood. And they don't ever reframe it They feel victimized by their family. They feel kind of bitter. They feel they got cheated, or they have some resentment and anger, and they don't make the conscious effort to have that there, not deny it. That's true. And it's also searching out. And for some of us, we really have to search to see, how did this make me stronger? How did this make me more independent? How did this make me a survivor? How did this make me resilient? What were the gifts that came even out of the suffering and the hardship when I was a tender young child? And it can also be in difficult adult relationships, romantic partnerships. Some people have really hard struggles with their siblings or other family members, but not to deny that there is difficulty there, but also there may be some gifts. There may be the gift of compassion for suffering that comes with the package. And that is a reframe that's enlivening to see, I'm not a loser, I'm not defective, I'm not a second, I'm a survivor. I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm using my therapy, I'm using my friendships, I'm utilizing my romantic partnership, I'm becoming a decent parent, I'm becoming a contributing member of my community, and to affirm that we have opportunities even out of the most difficult life circumstances.
Even doing something as simple as becoming mindful of the words that you're choosing to use when you think or talk about your experience, and becoming aware of the feelings or the associations that those words bring up for you. Using the word victim has certain connotations that create certain feelings within us. Using the word problem, like Linda just did,
it's a downer.
And it's not that there's anything wrong with using it, but there are consequences to the words that we use that will reinforce certain experiences within us, some of which we may not want to strengthen. So for example, when we assess something as being a problem, or we assess somebody as having a problem, or when we feel like we are problematic, that word will reinforce a certain mindset that isn't necessarily going to inspire us or support us to become more creative about dealing with it. For some people, maybe it will, but there are other words that you can use that can describe that same situation, that will put it in a different frame, and that frame can create within us motivation to take actions that, feeling like we are problematic, might not inspire us to take. For example, looking at a breakdown in our life as an opportunity to learn, to grow, to discover something that might be of value, is going to create a different kind of an experience for us than feeling like we're possessed with a problem or that we have a victim.
Can I give a couple of examples?
Sure.
I like thinking myself a nitty-gritty survivor for the things that I've gone through. I sometimes, I haven't told you this, but in my own mind, I think I am the resilience queen. Do you know that I've gone through a fair amount, and I've really practiced this reframing stuff.
Yeah.
So with my whole heart, I believe in it, because it's enlivened me not to feel like I got crushed or I got ground down by the life experiences that I've been through.
And I recognize that, and a lot of other people recognize that in you too. And that's one of the courses that we teach is called Stronger at the Broken Places, because I mean, both of us to some degree, but you certainly have been through more than your share of, let's say, challenging experiences.
And I've used all that crap to compost bloom out of.
Yeah, so
yes.
to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there is a gold inside so many people who we know and we know of who have achieved greatness in their lives. When you find out about what they've been through, a lot of them have been through very difficult, painful ordeals. In fact, they have attributed the strength and the creativity and the power and the compassion that they have now to having gone through those experiences and been able to learn from them and been able to get through and beyond the stage of feeling a victim. But most of them did go through some period of time in which they felt very victimized. They felt a lot of self-pity. They felt sorry for themselves. They felt really angry at the people and circumstances that put them through what they had to go through. So we're not saying that this is easy and quick and something that you can just, you snap your fingers and everything is fine again. No.
But life is going to give us some surprises.
Yeah.
It's going to not give us some of the things that we want, and it's going to give us a lot of things that we don't want. And if there's anything that I hate, it's meaningless suffering. If we have to suffer through some disappointments and some losses and some frustrating things in our life, at least to make some meaning out of it. And this reframing opportunity is the chance to make some real meaning out of it, to see it from a different vantage point, to deliberately have a different view, to consciously choose not to become cynical, not to become bitter, not to become negative, to really use the power that we have of having a good intellect, to be able to frame it in a way that lifts us rather than diminishes us.
Well, on that note, I think that would be a perfect ending note for us to finish with today. And if you enjoyed today's talk, then by all means,
tell your friends.
Don't keep it to yourself.
Pass
Let
it on.
Let your friends know that every Thursday at 1:30 Pacific time, the blooms are on, and to tune in with us.
And
don't
you can
be a
see
victim.
them after. You can see them after because they're archived. And even the people, your friends who don't play on Facebook, they're all on YouTube too. So I want to give you the topic for next week. Complaints are highly underrated. We'll see you next week.